All right, welcome back. We are at a 1:30 clinic with Annette Mitchell. She is super awesome. If you have tuned in online, you have heard her do this clinic before, but I keep asking her to come back and do it again because I feel like she is unique in her, the way she's able to connect to students and the way that she has a heart for helping other people learn how to really work with every student and help some of those tougher students that seem like at the beginning of the year they're going to be hard to win over. She's able to win them over and turn them into great band kids. So I'll let her take over from here.
And I've found that this changes every year because my kids change every year. And I'm one of those, you can skin a cat in multiple ways, and if one way doesn't work, you find a new one that does. So this, if you've done this with me before, this is probably not going to be exactly like it was before, because what I did 2 years ago didn't all work this year, and so I adapted because the kids I had this year were tough. This was the 6th grade babies that started band online. And so they were the most resistant babies I've ever had, and they were like dug in and like, you can't make me. And like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make them, and I'm gonna make them think it was their idea when I get finished with it. And they did. That was the best part, because at the beginning of the year I was like, I'm not gonna have fun this year. And then I was like, no, that's not how this works. Band is fun. How many of you guys have ever, I'm not gonna ask you if you've ever said this. I'm sure we've all occasionally said it, because I know I've said it, and it took me a while to change it. In fact, one of those students is probably watching right now. And she knows I said it about her because she and I talked about it. How many of you guys have ever heard another band director go, oh, well, that kid's just not a band kid? We've heard that, right? You don't have to raise your hands, because it hurts my heart to hear that. I've had people tell me, well, that kid's just not a band kid. Well, what is a band kid? What is a band kid? And whose job is it to turn that kid that isn't a band kid into a band kid? Are they broken? Because if you're telling me these kids are broken, we have a problem, don't we? And I know a lot of my other teachers in my building sometimes tell me, well, there's nothing I can do with that kid. And I have to look at them and go, you've already given up on this kid who is like 12. What do they have to look forward to if we've given up on them when they're 10, 11, 12 years old? Because I teach middle school. How many middle school directors? Awesome. High school? Younger? Right. Okay, so if we're giving up on these kids before they even become an adult, what kind of adult are we going to be working with later? So I started this clinic as a low risk, low SES, poverty, tough kids, and what I found since 2020 is it's in every kid, in every school, every teacher I meet is just going, I don't know what I'm going to do anymore. Because these kids just fill in the blank here with something that is frustrating, that seems immobile, immovable, like you are playing with a brick wall. And I will tell you, my mother, who's also going to be watching, hi Mom, she looks at me every year and goes, you're always in a bad mood and tell me it's just not going to work this year and it's going to be a terrible year for the first 6 weeks of school. And invariably, on week 6, you're like, this is the best year ever. I'm going to have the best bands and the best students. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then I caught myself doing it 2 years ago, and I was like, dang it. So this last year, I was like, I am not doing that. And then those 8th graders walked in this year. How many people had 8th graders this year? Oh, buddy, right? They don't want to work. Why would you want to work? Like, I didn't have to do anything in 6th grade, and I got 100, right? And working is hard, and I don't do hard things, right? And I'm going to be, this is my favorite one, I'm going to be a professional athlete when I grow up, so I don't need any of this, because that's the answer to everything, right? Yeah. They see these people that have been through hard times like them, that are being successful, making millions of dollars, and that's going to be them. And we all know the truth about how that works, right? Okay, so it used to be poverty is a chronic experience resulting from an aggregate of adverse social and economic risk factors, right? Okay, now it's just like doing work is hard. And it's because we had a long time where we didn't have to, and now everybody's setting boundaries, and boundaries involve not doing work. And I can sit on my phone and ignore all of you and succeed in life from my phone because socially I'm good. And let's be honest, middle school and high school students, social is their like that's their litmus test of how well I am successfully, right? or how successful I am. Like, am I being socially accepted? I'm winning. It doesn't matter what my grades are. It doesn't matter if I did my work. It doesn't matter if my teachers are happy, right? And so it's, yeah, the poverty thing's still an issue, and it's like deep and dark, and like those kids probably have it even tougher right now because they've got to navigate all this other stuff too. Okay, and so what I start out doing is I remind my students that they are not the situation that they live in, because a lot of my kids have one parent at home. A lot of my kids don't see that parent because they're working 3 jobs, right? Okay. They are the parent to their siblings, a lot of them. A lot of them are also the translator at home, because my school is approaching 80% Hispanic now. And a lot of their parents don't speak English. And so all of those things can be a stumbling block for these kids. And when you've already got that mindset of work is hard, like it's so easy to shut down. And I think we can all like agree that shutting down is the easiest answer, right? Like if I feel like I'm gonna be in a pressure situation, if I just give up, people will leave me alone, right? And then there's those kids that don't get enough attention, that are just gonna be like in your face all the time. And those are the ones that people look at and go, well, you're just not a band kid. When in reality, that probably could be the best band kid, because they're already up in your face, right? And so I think it's more important that we look at the tools that they have. And we start figuring out, okay, what tools do they have that they maybe don't even realize that they like can use, okay? So on my handout, I talk about the toolbox versus the multi-tool. Okay, kids that come from a more traditional home life, they probably have a toolbox. Their parents have set it up for them. They put all the tools in there, right? They're like helping them. They've prevented their exposure to all the things that could be bad for them, right? And they've just been pushing them along the path. We all kind of went through that if we had those parents, okay? Or they're the other side. They're the parent. They have the parent that's working 3 jobs. There's no other parent. They sometimes don't see this parent. I had a kid this year whose parent was living with their new significant other, and the kids were at home without that parent ever. And so they would never see that parent, and they would have to come and tell me our water got cut off last night. Okay? But does that mean that kid doesn't have tools? No. They probably have better tools than the kid that the parents have been handing it to, right? And lining them up. This, and that's why I love the pictures that I put on the handout. I don't know if you even have or see the handout.
Oh, we have it somewhere. Let me find it. We moved everything
So,
to this room.
I picked 2 pictures. One is like this toolbox that you can carry around that has tools exploding out of it. Okay, they may have a ton of tools, but do they even know which one to use for a certain situation? Okay, Mr. Roberts was talking the other day about they don't even know how to listen. They can listen. They've been taught listening, but they don't know how to use it, right? Especially in a classroom setting or at home for that matter. I have a 10-year-old. I'm right there. I get it. We're going to have a lesson about listening when I get home. But then these kids that have these really struggle bus home lives where they are responsible for themselves, I think of them more like a multi-tool, where you've got like the knife and the screwdriver and the corkscrew and the pliers, and they all just keep pulling out, and you just have 1,000 tools in this one little thing. They probably don't even realize that they have tools, okay? My multi-tool kids, they raise siblings. Do they have skills with working with others if they're raising their siblings that they don't even acknowledge or realize because they've never realized they do it? They just do it. They probably, I know that there was a student that was told, you're terrible at math and you just don't understand math. But this student could do math to make sure she had enough food for every one of the siblings in her house and make sure she had enough money to go buy the amount of food she needed. Is she bad at math? No, she's just used to using it in a different way. Okay, and hers is in a critical crisis kind of way. And so I start looking at these students going, what tools do you have that you don't realize could be useful for this situation, okay? And so we've got to teach them the tools that they have, okay? Whether they come supplied with tools from their parents or they come supplied with tools from Hard Knocks Life. And start preparing them with tools. Another thing that I've really gotten into this last year is teaching them to solve their own problems.
Yes.
Because I would say that is like something they've lost the skill of. Like, we don't know how to solve our problems. It's like, I lost all my music. What are you gonna do about it? Okay?
Yep.
So, and I have some, and this is how smart some of my students are. I had the sweetest little baby, and I was telling Tamara about this earlier. Sweetest little baby in my clarinet class. And you'll watch other teachers, if they seem slow, but they're super sweet, and they bat their eyelashes a lot, and they talk like this to them, they'll be like, oh, poor honey, it's okay. That's good enough, right? And they figure out, oh, that's how I work people, right?
Yes.
If I bat my eyelashes, and this one in particular, he's Hispanic, he is not a native Spanish speaker. Oh, Miss, I lost my music. Can you give me more? And I've told my kids, I tell them the first day of band, I don't make copies. And they're like, sure. And I was like, I don't make copies. You will have to figure out how to solve your problem. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. Until they lose their first set of copies and they're like, I don't have music. What are you going to do about it? Oh, honey. How are you going to solve that problem? That's a real big problem, isn't it? Yeah. I was like, what are you going to do about it? Oh, I don't know. And we've done this in this rehearsal that you guys got to come watch. We have a couple of kiddos that have lost their music. And they'll sit there and not play. And my answer is, how are you going to solve that problem? And one young man actually stood up and yelled at us today because he had reached his frustration level. And so we stopped rehearsal and we talked through what his choices were. And we let other kids give suggestions. And one of the kids was like, well, I'm having to share with my neighbor. Can you share with yours? And they weren't mean and they weren't being like judgmental. And like the kid next to him slides his stand over and goes, right? So my little sweetheart became, oh, niece, I lost my music. Can you get me more? No, sir, I can't. What are you going to do about that? It really stinks. Like, that's hard to deal with, isn't it? Oh, yes. Well, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. And I was like, well, you think about it. And let me know if we need to talk through it. And so every day, oh, miss, I lost my music. I need copies. I understand. How are you going to get some more copies? And he would always sit next to his friend because his friend would be like, come here, sit down. Here's my music. So finally one day, he and his friend get together and they're like, we can solve this problem. Thankfully, his friend is a problem solver. They go to the front office. They walk in to this sweet office lady. Oh, Miss Mitchell is so mean. I lost my music and she don't give me more. And she's like, oh, honey, come here. Let me make your copies for you. I just made a problem solver, right? And he comes into the band room that day and goes, I got copies. I'm like, there you go. I knew you could do it. And he sat down. 2 days later, guess what? Oh, me. So I was like, don't even. I know how to get more. Yes, you do. Okay, and so we have to teach them they have skills. They have problem-solving skills, right? Because if they feel like they're incapable, are they going to be fun to teach? Not at all, because we have too many children to help. They all need help, right? And if we don't teach them problem-solving skills, who will? Is their math teacher going to teach them? And no pun intended. Is their math teacher going to teach them real-life problem-solving skills? No. Show your work, right? But like, they're not going to teach them how to solve their own personal problems that are going to make them better in life. That's our job. That's why they need to be band kids. That kid needs band more than most of the rest of my kids. Okay, and that's another statement I love and hate. He needs band more than band needs him. Really? Like, he needs band. He needs his band family. He needs these people being his support team to help him become a useful human. Because if this 8th grade class that just left me doesn't get these skills, one of them's going to be president someday. I mean, I don't know. So they've got to learn these skills somehow. Okay, I have children that work through being the caregiver. I have kids that already work full-time jobs. I have kids that are homeless. I have kids that don't have parents around or don't have parents. My school actually has both of the homes for students that are in the foster system that cannot be placed in a home anymore because they either don't have family or have something critical about them that makes them not able to be placed in a home. And these children show up at our school the day that they're placed at the home and are put in classes and they're like, swim, baby. Okay, and I've even at one point, I have a counselor, she loves me and she knows how I take care of my children. It was May. This sweet baby walks in and she goes, he's never been in band before. I know you have a concert in a week and a half and he's now yours. Figure it out, you'll understand. I'm like, oh wow. Several words came through my brain that I shouldn't say at school and I'm like, okay. And then I met this sweet guy and I'm like, I know why she put him in here. And he instantly was a member of our family. And he just looked at me and he goes, I'll do whatever you ask. Just give me something to do. I was like, you know, how about a kid putting priority on, or putting my job on me, going, it's your job. So we figured it out. And I found a triangle, a suspended cymbal, and a tambourine in our third band. And I taught him the first little section of it. I said, do you see this here? Here's how we play it. I played it, I had him play it back to me. I was like, do what you can with it now and we'll have a little more and I'll just take some time, right? And we'll work on it and we'll get it. So he got back there and he was playing that suspended cymbal like a hoss. He was doing it for those 2 measures. And then we'd work with some other sections and come back to it and all of a sudden he's playing like 10 measures. I'm like, what the heck? I know this kid has never seen music in his life and he is like figuring it out. The next day he walks in and he goes, I already learned the whole suspended cymbal part. Can you show me a little bit about triangle? I'm like, what? Okay, and these kiddos, when they go home every day, they get picked up in a big giant van that takes them back. So I've started calling that their driver, right? Is your driver picking you up today? Right? Is your limo coming? Right? Okay, I have to make arrangements for these kids to even come to our concerts because their curfews coincide with our concert. But I can make that happen for them, right? This little man in 2 weeks learned every bit of every piece on every instrument I assigned him. In fact, I started assigning him multiple instruments to switch back and forth to because he was figuring it out. Did I have to teach him quarter note and eighth note? No. I showed him quarter note and eighth note. We worked on a little bit, and this kid was so smart, Foster and Paul, that he figured out, oh, this one is this long, and these 2 are the same length put together as that one. And he did it. And he felt like $1 million. The class loved him. They were so impressed because how hard had they worked for 1 to 2 years to get where he's at in 2 weeks. So he was like the rock star of the whole class, right? And this is all with going home to some people that are busy making meals and cleaning bathrooms for them and then monitoring them while they stay in their dorm room. And that's their life after school. And at the end of school, because we're like, we love this kid. By the end of school, it was like, this kid's always been here. He's just part of our band. And he came up and he goes, I get to go back to my mom. Right? So I have this kid that's like killed it, become a part of our team. And like I had forgotten because he was such a great part of it. Could I have looked at that counselor and gone, we can't do that right now. We're 2 weeks from the concert. I'm sorry. I just can't take anymore. I could have, and I would have been justified in it, placing my boundaries, right? Would it have been what he needed? Absolutely not. Could I have not cared? Absolutely, right? Did I make a difference in that kid's life? And every kid in that room, even though they didn't know his situation, like he made an impact on every kid in that room bigger than I did. And that kid's gonna have that to take with him everywhere, no matter what happens with mom from now on, because he was part of that family. And so those are the kinds of kids I'm working with, okay? We have a tough crowd. We have staff members that quit every single year. I don't know about y'all, but we had staff members walking out. They'd just be like, deuces, y'all figure it out. Yep. I had a teacher friend of mine And I wound up subbing his class most of the time this spring semester because, bless his heart, he decided he just couldn't handle it anymore and they couldn't get a sub for his class. So first period, that was part of our job. Okay, and teachers are just tossing deuces and leaving, right? Okay, and I think if they knew these things about their kids and they addressed them from a different way, first of all, they wouldn't feel so helpless and hopeless. And second of all, they would be empowering their students, and their students would be doing better. People look at me all the time and go, well, it's just because only the good kids sign up for band. And I'm like, come on down, because that same kid that totally railroaded your lesson today is sitting right here in my tuba section, and he's my section leader, right? And so it's a lie, but they tell themselves, and they don't come check either because they like their lie that they tell themselves, right? Okay, so what I have to do, and this is especially true now with our COVID babies, I have to figure out what their motivations are. Okay, you have to know, and it's not what you're gonna think it is. And I tell myself that too. I have created, and I think, Tamara, I'm getting ready, I have a new article in my mind that I'm gonna write, finally.
Okay.
It's all about motivations, okay? I've created this really cool chart of like words that are like motivators in our lives, like food, family, friends, you know, all the things that motivate us to do things. And I let them go and put a check mark by any one of them that resonates with them. And then there's a section where they can add extra words that are like, Miss, you forgot this. Duh, right? And you're like, yeah, you're right, dude, add it there. We'll make that a new word on our sheet, right? And then I tally them, and this is especially true from my top band, my honors band, and they are fantastic. But they are hard to motivate. They were this year, okay? And they're the elite children in my building. So if my elite children are hard to motivate, I would never want to teach math, right? Because I don't know how I would motivate, and I'm terrible at math. I don't know how I would motivate a kid in math, but that's why I'm not a math teacher, right? That's why the math teachers need to be the math teachers, because they need to motivate those kids to love math as much as they do, or at least get them closer, right? So I have them fill out this sheet, and then I take their motivators, and I tally them, and I find out what are the most common motivators in each class. And I always, it used to be food, right? Especially with my low socio babies, like they're always hungry. And middle schoolers are hungry anyway, right? Yes?
Can we get the sheet?
Do we have the sheet?
We do have a handout. We do not have the list of words.
Oh, I will get it. Yes, sorry. Yes, that was actually what I was just saying. Like
She's saying she might write an article for the
as
website.
I was processing
It'll
this
be on
clinic
there.
today, and
Okay.
between my 5 seconds between things, I was like, I really need to write that one because I knew I was going to talk about it today, and I knew you were going to be like, I want to see this. But I tally it, and what's funny is for the last 2 years, food is almost never checked because food is no longer a motivator for my kids. Now, that may not be the same for you. Okay, in certain classes, it's more of a motivator than others. Okay, for my top band, I only had 2 out of 45 kids put food as a motivator. And I was like, holy cow. Right? Now, you'll be shocked to know that money is a motivator. Okay, and when I gave out those gift cards at the end of the year for the kids that had perfect attendance at section rehearsals for the whole year, they were pretty proud, right? They got to choose between Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. $5. Doesn't even get them the full meal, right? But they were like, dude, I only got to get 50 more cents and I'm good, right? And so, like, and I'm trying to build that, like, oh, yeah, you remember at the end of the year last year, that kid got, so I need to come to section rehearsals, okay? Because this is a slow burn, y'all. This is like, we're building this, okay? You catch the ones you can, and then you build off of those. Okay, and so the biggest motivators for my kids this year were their friends, and that one has been consistent forever because hello middle school. Their families, which doesn't surprise me either because they, even if their family is really rough, they're so plugged in there. Okay, they want more there even if they can't get it. And then this year was competition, which shocked me because these 8th graders hate doing work, right? But they were like, oh, I love competition. I'm like, what? How does that even connect in an 8th grader's mind? I love competition, but I hate work. those don't work together, honey, which may be why they're so grouchy all the time. It's because their brain's at war with itself. So I came up with ways to hit them where it hurts, right? Get them like, oh man, I want to do that. Dang it. Okay? And so all of a sudden, I start getting competition going on, right? And getting kids engaged. Okay, the other thing I did with my honors band this year, because at Christmas I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do about UIL this year. Like, every piece I picked, it was like, can't trust the trumpet, can't trust the tuba, can't trust the, and I'm like, who can I trust? Like 6th, 7th graders? Literally, that was where I was at. And I was like, all right, I need to step back and take a look at myself in the mirror, because clearly I'm screwing this up, okay? And I have to say this every time, because if you haven't heard this saying, you need to take it and store it somewhere. And if it hurts right now, it hurt me the first time I heard it too. And I've watched some people hear it and it hurts them so bad that they're like, I don't ever want to hear that again. That's just stupid. But this is Lynn Jackson. How many people know Lynn Jackson? She's my idol in life. I want to be Lynn Jackson when I grow up. She looked at me one time and was like, knife to the heart. Whatever's happening in your classroom, good or bad, you're giving permission for it. And that I was like, and she meant it because it wasn't going well in my class. And she's the kindest person. She will never tell you you're doing a bad job. She will do it like that. And it's like evaporation, right? So I was looking myself in the mirror going, all right, if I'm not trusting all of these different sections to lead something in our UIL music, I need to turn it back on this one. So I just took him back to class and I went in there and I made a sheet that was like, what is your goal for this semester? And it was like questions, and I was like, I want a full sentence. If you give me one word, I'm gonna give it back and we're gonna do this again. And they know that when I say these things, I'm not going to wuss out on it. I'm going at them with it until they get it. So I need a complete sentence. What's your goal for this band for this year? What are you personally willing to do to achieve that goal? What do you think is reasonable to ask of others to do that goal? Okay, and this will all be part of that one that I'm gonna write. And I asked them some pretty serious high level questions, okay? And if I have kids in a school that can't handle wording like that, I'm gonna bring that wording down to their level because they can think like this even if their personal vocabulary isn't as strong, right? I can reword it down to 3rd grade level if necessary and get this kind of thinking going on with my kids, okay? And so I asked them these questions and then I combined all their answers together. And I came up with 9 bullet points that literally said all the things that most of them were saying. They were saying the same stuff. We want to play really challenging music that's really exciting and fun for UIL. Well, we haven't been able to play exciting, challenging, fun music up to this point. Why? Because you won't go home and practice. Okay? So, then I asked him, what are you willing to do? I'm willing to practice every day. Like I had people giving suggestions on this is how many minutes we should at least practice every day. And so I'm taking all this information and they, using their information, there were 9 bullet points. So I made it into a contract. And I filled this contract out and at the bottom, it had my signature, it had mom or dad's signature, and it had their signature. I was like, if you're gonna be in this band next semester and not in the lower band, you're gonna take this home and get it signed. And you're gonna bring it back to me, you're gonna sign it, and I'm gonna sign it too. And I signed it in blue ink, so they knew that I went through the effort of signing every single individual sheet myself. Okay, because is that important to a middle schooler and high school that you put in the effort too? And for me to look at them and go, you signed it once, I signed it 46 times. That means something to them. Okay, they may act like it doesn't, but it really does. And so I also had my awesome technology guy at school print us a giant life-size poster as tall as I was with these 9 bullet points on it, and I put it on the wall where it was in front of their faces every rehearsal. So if I needed to point at it, I could. I had to point at it 0 times this spring semester. And every kid started getting into it. And when we started collecting the sheets, I started a sign on the door. We are 10% committed. We are 12% committed. And I would tell them that this many out of this many kids in our band. Well, pretty soon we're at 50% committed. Now the 50 are looking at the other 50 going, what's your problem? Who hasn't turned it in? We are 75% committed. And then because I'm a mean person and we're a family, and at this point I've established that relationship with these kids over the last 2 to 3 years, I put, these are the students that aren't committed yet. And I put the list on the door. And man, you want to believe those sheets came back really fast because their friends were coming up going, why haven't you turned that in yet? Oh, I forgot to get it signed. It's right here. See, I've already signed it. It's on my binder. I just got to get my mom to sign it. And it took 0% more time to get the rest of those sheets in because the whole band is now holding each other accountable. Yes.
Someone online just said, oh my God, can I be in Annette's band?
Amen.
So, and it was funny because I started the year, here was the real rub. We opened my campus last year. So this group of 7th graders were my first set of beginners. Before that, we were a 6th grade campus and a 7th grade campus, and I didn't get to teach the beginners. So last year was my first group of beginners, and now they're my first group of 7th graders. I had way more 7th graders in my band this year than ever before. Why? Because I taught them their fundamentals differently, and my 8th graders have been online. So the 8th graders come in, and we do a lot of talking in our rehearsals, and I get the kids to tell me what they hear. Okay, you will not see this in this 143-piece band, because once one kid has an opinion, everyone else needs an opinion, and we ain't got time for that because we get 70 minutes for a full band in 5 days. So, because we don't get a rehearsal on Saturday, our rehearsal is warm up. But I do, I ask them their opinions, and to begin with, every 7th grader had their hand up every time. And they're like, well, I hear this 8th grader over here, and they're playing a little bit louder than I am. And that 8th grader's like, how dare you? You can't talk to me like that. And they're like, well, it's just what I heard. And I start my 6th graders having opinions day one. I want them to find their voices and be happy people that feel like they can contribute and have safe opinions, right? And now my 8th graders are like, you can't have an opinion about me. And I'm like, yeah, they sure can. And it sounds like you need to do some work at home, right? Okay, well, here we come spring semester. It is all out 8th grade war on the 7th graders. And the 7th graders, I love them so much. They're like, what? Huh? So for once, the 7th grade brain worked in my advantage so well because the 7th graders had no idea the 8th graders hated them with passion. And I'm like, sweet, let's go. And by January, every leader in my band is a 7th grader, and the 8th graders haven't even realized it. And then we have this new contract, and the 8th graders are like, okay. Well, I gotta change my tune because we're doing these things, and I'm gonna hold my 7th grade. Oh, he's already doing it. Well, I'm gonna have to hold my 8th graders accountable because this 7th grader, he's good. Wow, I want to be like you when I grow up. And on our UIL program this year, I started out with these really cheesy pieces that I was going to play. And by the time we got to UIL, we were playing the full Capriole suite. And if you've never done Capriole suite, don't do it. But it was the right piece for the right group of kids. And it was way over their heads when we started. And I was like, I've done this piece before, and it is not a grade 2. If you're from Texas, it's on the grade 2 list. It will never be a grade 2. And we played that whole sucker, and I didn't conduct 2 of the 3 movements. I stood there and pointed at the leader that was in charge. Because when I did that and I let them take charge, they played it more in tune, they played it more in time, and I didn't need to wave a stick at them. I was actually holding them back. And that was my clinician. I work with Alan Harkey. He comes out and works with our group every couple of weeks, because usually we have stupid scheduling issues every other week where we're testing or doing something that keeps us from having band that day. But I literally would just, at the beginning of each phrase, point to the person that they're listening to so they could all remember to focus over here. And then we'll focus over here. And out of my entire band, there were only 3 leaders. There were 8th graders in any phrase that we played. And by that point, the 8th graders really respected these 7th graders and go, oh no, he is the leader because he's amazing. Okay, we also, I don't know if you're familiar with Beach Spring, but it opens with 2 clarinets and a French horn. It starts with 1 clarinet and then a duet begins and then the French horn joins. And I would just look over at my sweet little 7th grade boy who has the biggest sarcastic, he and I go at each other every day in rehearsal. And I would just look over and go, and he'd play the first note because he's been sitting there going, come on, give me the nod. And he would go, right? And then his little best friend would come in right behind him, and it was all 7th graders playing all the solos in that piece. Okay? Did the 8th graders like that? No. Could the 8th graders play it better? No. Were they aware of this and okay with it by this point? Yes. Did they have a successful season? They did. And did they love it? Absolutely. Did I have 8th graders bawling their eyes out the last day of school to the point that I was too? Absolutely. And if you told me at the beginning of the year that I was going to like any of them, I would have called you a liar. Okay? Because they were hard. And when I see them at high school now, we all get teary. Okay? When we go to watch them at their marching practices, I'm like, my baby's grown up, right? Because we went from that place where we weren't happy with each other to a place where we like really respect each other. And I could have easily gone, well, this year is out the door, right? I'm gonna pick some cheesy stuff and just slog through it until it's over, and been miserable, right? Like all those other teachers in my building. And I couldn't do that because that's not fair for the kids. That's not fair for me. And that's not what music is about, right? Okay, and so I had to figure out creative ways. Have I ever done a sheet like that where they fill out their thoughts and I make 9 bullet points? No. Will I do it again? Absolutely. Because I had to work way less hard once they were responsible for it. Okay, and these kids, I don't care what their background is. I don't care if they were a 2020 baby that was online the entire year. Like, they can be responsible for it. They can solve their problems.
And this is kind of like what she was saying. She's done this clinic 3 times.
And it's
been
nothing
different
like
every time because
Yeah.
every year she's had a different group. So she's using these stories, completely different tactics she's used to
And
do
this
it. So
was-
you have to be creative within your own situation.
Yeah. And I kind of like it because if every year was the same every year, that gets really boring. And then I get into like this routine, and then am I being an effective teacher anymore? Or am I just repeating last year again for a new group of kids? Because that's not fun for me. And y'all, band is fun. That's why we do it, right? We didn't go, oh, I hate band, I'm gonna be a band director. Band was our home. It was our place that we felt the most comfortable. It was a place where we could excel in our own way, right? And that looked different for each of us, okay? And so I challenge you, and I have one of my former students, she's watching today, and she just got her first band job. Woo! And so she started out teaching elementary, and then 2020 happened, and she's been having a heck of a time trying to get out of elementary. And she's had lots of interviews this summer going, well, why do you want to do band now? And finally somebody went, let's go. You clearly want this way worse than anybody else I've met. Well, this was the girl that in 6th grade, if I had been like, well, this isn't a band kid, which I did, and she knows I did, so this is not a news flash for her. I tried to make her quit because she was that kid in my flute class that would have blow-ups to get everyone's attention. She literally threw her flute on the floor one day. Well, it wasn't one, it was many days. And I'm that bad, I'm a bad band director. I didn't acknowledge it because that was an attention-seeking moment. It wasn't a careless moment. There's a difference, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's an attention-seeking moment and I give it attention, I've just given her permission to do it more, right? So I ignored it. And finally, one day, one of the sweet little ladies in that class raises her hand. Mrs. Mitchell, why do you never get mad at her when she drops her flute? And I said, well, I don't get mad at her because her parents are going to have to pay for it anyway, and she's doing it on purpose. And she stands up and sets her flute in her chair and storms out the door. And I'm like, all right. I know exactly the song she wants to play right now. Everybody get it out. And I didn't tell them this. I was just like, everybody get out this song. And we start playing it because I know she's dying to play this song. Guess what happened? And she's playing the song. And I was desperate. I was like, I'm going to make this girl quit. I told my husband this almost every day. And he's like, sure you are. I'm going to make her quit. I'm going to make her so miserable she's going to quit. And then in 7th grade, she was my first chair flute player. I'm like, First off, how did this happen? And second of all, what the heck am I gonna do? My top band, first year flute player, is the girl that throws her flute on the floor and gets it stuck on her thumb. No, it wasn't your thumb. Sorry, it wasn't her thumb, it was her middle finger. It was so appropriate. It got stuck, and I had to send her to the nurse. And the nurse and I were like, we died for days. It was like every time we saw each other, we had to start laughing because she literally had to ice her middle finger down to get her foot joint off of her middle finger, right? This is the kind of kid I was working with. Well, there were lots of things about her home life that I didn't know. I knew she lived in this really fancy house down the street. It was one of the only fancy neighborhood houses sections in my building, so I assumed, oh, well, this kid's fine. She was not fine. There was so much awful stuff happening to her at that time, I didn't know. Her attention seeking was needed. And if I had ignored her completely and not encouraged her to come back and play the stuff she wanted to play, and if I hadn't finally been like, well, dang it, she's my first chair flute, so I gotta figure something out now, she might not have made it, y'all. And she tells me that all the time. Okay? Instead, she was an all-region flute player many times. She nearly made All-State on piccolo, and we all know how hard that is, right? It can only take 3. Okay? And she turned that flute playing into her escape from the stuff that was going on. And she understands probably better than just about anybody why band is important. So those people that just hired her are in for a super treat, because she's going to be the one saving those kids that are like her. And she's going to be in a district where that's going to be necessary. I'm really excited for her. Okay? Where would she be right now if I hadn't finally gotten over myself and my anger and frustration at her attitude that she showed me every day in class, and realized she actually could be a great person if we give her a place to be great. Okay? So I'm totally off my little handout. I had a feeling that was going to happen, but
We have about 9 minutes left.
no problem. So what are some things that shouldn't matter about kids ever? How much their parents make. Who cares? Does that have anything to do with your intelligence? No. Does it mean you're going to have some special things we need to train you through? Absolutely. Okay, but some of those kids whose parents don't have a good income, you don't even know it. Okay? I have a kid here at camp. I don't know how his mom paid for him. I'm so glad he's here, though. It's magic that he's here, and he's going to learn so much from being here. Their living arrangements. I've had kids living in cars. That doesn't mean they can't play the tuba. I've had kids living in hotel rooms. Yeah, they can't practice these things at home, right? But that's why I have the practice rooms open in the morning and the afternoon, and I am very interactive with my principals going, we have to allow them to be down here to practice before and after school. Okay, I've even had principals that were so flexible, they were like, if they get their work done, this can be a treat, they can come down and practice as long as they're behaving. Great. Okay, I've gotten some really great all-state kids out of that, right? I've had some kids I've sent to the high school that have been 3- and 4-year all-staters because they could practice at school and have that place. Okay, the other thing that we have to be really careful about is ignoring a kid because of their likelihood of moving. Okay, yeah, it sucks when your first chair kid moves. My first chair trombone for last year moved over the summer because it's becoming too expensive to live in the little town I'm in, because we're getting all the technology companies coming in and the house prices are going up, and her parents literally couldn't afford the taxes that were being added to their rent because the rent price just kept going up, and they had to move to Arkansas. Okay, and this was a kid that needed to be with us, and I hated to lose her. But I'm still going to teach her to be the best she can, because what if she goes to her new district and she's the best kid they've ever seen? Well, now I've created a situation for her where she is like an anomaly, the unicorn at her new school. Okay, and how cool is it to come into your new school and be the unicorn? A great thing. Okay, these kids are capable of anything we give them permission to do. Okay, if we only look at their behavior in class and decide based on their behavior what they're capable of or what we're willing to take, we've missed it. Okay, and and you need to know your limits, right? I get that. But we also need to see if there's ways that I know what my limit is. How do I flip this where this kid can be successful in a way that I'm okay with. Okay, the way I do that in my room is procedures. Okay, and I'm real specific with my procedures, and I loved Mr. Roberts' clinic that he did because it was like, I have some new, even more detailed procedures. The more detailed with your procedures you can be, the better it is. And I know Dr. Garner was talking about yesterday about how he came in the second year and he was a meanie, right? I don't have to be mean. I can be cool with the kids from day one because there's so much structure. And my principal this year, he came in and he goes, next year you guys are going to be doing a clinic for the staff on how you get these kids to come in and set up without you having to be everywhere. I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, like you can literally stand in your office and they just come in and set up and they're ready to go. And I know that didn't happen by accident. So I was like, oh, you're right. Absolutely. Because I need to be in my office because I was dealing with 3 kids that were melting down about different problems, right? And I need them to be ready when I'm finished. Agreed? I mean, that's us band directors. We're not just band directors. We're counselors. We're parents. We're like everything to them, right? My assistant director is having to embrace the fact that she's their sibling. She's not handling that always well. She doesn't like being their sibling. And I keep going, you are close to the same age as their siblings. Embrace it and use it to your advantage. Because they love their siblings, even though they sometimes hate their siblings. Are they going to talk to you always appropriately? No, because they're going to no. But if we don't take it personal and remember, I have this opportunity with that relationship of sibling, I can make this kid more successful if I use that to my advantage. I used to have that advantage. Now I'm older than most of their moms. Because some of these kids were born when they were 14, and some of them I'm older than their grandmas because there were 2 generations of 14-year-old moms. Right? And so, I have way progressed past sisterhood and aunthood at this point, right? And so I'm squarely in mom talk, right? But man, my assistant director can hit him where it hurts, and it's great. I'm like, oh, you need to go talk to her, right? Because she's fantastic at it. We have to be consistent. They have to know they can trust us, right? How many people in their lives can they not trust at this point? Okay? Even their parents are on their phones. They can't trust their parents to take care of them sometimes. So if all of a sudden they know, oh my gosh, she said this, and yesterday I told the kids, if you're late to rehearsal again, you're moving to the end of the section. I have one little girl in the varsity band that comes from my school, and she literally was hauling it in, and the whole section was with her, and she's like, no, serious, she doesn't play. We need to be in our seats, because if we're late, we're gonna move down. And the whole French horn section is in their seats, ready to go. And then they got to watch the trumpet section, have a rearrangement session. And they're like, oh, dang, you're right. She goes, told you. She doesn't say things that she doesn't do. Okay, we have to be positive, because how much negativity do they see? It's everywhere. In fact, where I live, there's so much negativity between adults right now, and it makes me feel bad. They're seeing that everywhere. When they see a positive adult, they're like, what happened to you? I kind of like it. I'm not sure how to interact with it yet. That's where we teach them how to interact with positive adults, right? And teach them that they could choose to be a positive adult too. And then we need them to feel safe and supported, because we're going to take risks in the band room. Okay, and we need to learn that mistakes are necessary. They hate that. Mistakes are necessary. We're going to celebrate our mistakes. Okay? We're going to totally suck at things sometimes. And that's what's needed to be good at anything. And is that something they can take with them to other places? Absolutely. So we're building skills that no other teacher is going to tell you, go ahead and get that math problem wrong, and then we're going to be happy about it. Nobody does that. The math teacher's like, you missed that one too. F. Right? And they come in so afraid of making mistakes. So we got to break them of that and make it a safe place to make mistakes. Okay? All right. So you have to have the best pedagogy, obviously. You have to have high expectations. Okay? We can go get pedagogy, can't we? There's pedagogy everywhere now. We have to have high expectations. We have to speak to them in their language. If they come to you with lower vocabulary, speak to them in lower vocabulary. It is okay. If they speak in 3rd grade level English, use 3rd grade level English and build them up from there. Okay, and I have a lot of people that offends them. They're like, you should never talk down to them. I'm not. I'm on their level bringing them up. Okay, I have taught in a school where they were all on about a 3rd grade level vocabulary-wise. And I would have to reframe everything my clinician said and really hurt her feelings. And I'm like, it's not you, it's us. And you're saying great things that I want them to understand. I'm not being rude. But she felt like I was being rude. Here's the big one. Don't take things personally. It's hard not to take it personal. That's why teachers leave. That's why they peace out in the middle of the day and go, I'm out, y'all figure it out. They took it personal. You see them walking out the door, you can go, I'm not the one who took it personal, right? Okay, these kids aren't trying to attack us. They may act like they are, but it has something completely different to do with it. Don't take it personal. Okay, get outside your own comfort zone, because that shows them they can too. And if all else fails, play games. That's how Tamarine and I got started with her games. And it's all her, because she called me one time, she's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, play games, they won't even know they're having band. And if that's what you gotta start with, play games. Don't make it band until they're ready for it to be band. And then make it band. And then make them love it. Because once they love it, do we love them? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that kid that we feel maybe unlovable at the beginning, they can be a great band kid. And ways you can tell if you've done it. Do the kids live in your room? And I don't mean just the nice ones. I mean all of them. Do they want to be in your room before and after school, and at lunch, and in between classes, and in other kids' classes? Like, I had kids come in, can I play along with this class? Sure. As long as you've got your work done in your other classes and you're being nice in here, right? Do they want to live in your room? Are they wanting to teach the young ones to help bring them up and pass it on to the next generation? Okay, those are the things we want to check to see if we're doing a good job. Your ratings, sorry to tell you this, don't matter. I give you permission to stop judging yourself based on your ratings. Okay, yes, ratings are still always going to matter to us, right? Because we were the first year kids. But your ratings don't matter. The kids matter. And if we lose sight of that and make it about our ratings and ourselves, we're the wrong kind of band director. And we're missing kids. So I'm going to leave it with that.